What's good, y'all? It's Dave, and today I'm back with yet another ranking video, and I'm actually glad, I'm actually proud that I get to make this ranking video because finally this series, which is definitely one of my favorite series so far, it actually has enough entries in it now. Like it actually has enough installments in the series to where I can actually make a series. All right, and that gaming series that I'm referring to was no other than the Mafia series. Now, the Mafia, the original game came out in 2003, and then they've just made a sequel, Mafia 2, later on, and then Mafia 3, and then now we have Mafia Old Country, and then of course let's not forget about the Mafia 1 remake called Mafia Definitive Edition that came out during COVID. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the ranking. All right, y'all. So I got them all listed here. All right, and I took out all these down here at the bottom are just DLC. Like that, I don't rank DLC. That I don't even know how people find the time to do that shit because DLC really just doesn't. But hey, like I said, people review everything. I see people review DLC, but I just don't. All right, so we're going to start off with just the main entries in the series. All right, starting with the OG Mafia. Like I said, the one that came out in 2003. I'm not going to lie, y'all, this right here, this was a amazing experience. It absolutely was. Like, there was no other game. Like, it was a GTA clone for sure, absolutely, because, GTA clones exploded across the gaming industry. But this right here, it was actually about organized crime. It was Italian based, just organized crime. That's what I loved about it as a kid. Keep in mind, I used to play this when I was like 7 and 8, and I enjoyed this game. It was very easy to catch on to. I shouldn't have been playing this game when I was 7 and 8, but I was anyway. And, like just the missions and stuff that they actually all brought back into the Mafia remake. I got to play the OG mission, like defending the barn. If you guys know that mission where you go up to do like a liquor deal and then it goes haywire. You guys are like doing a standoff at the barn. Yeah, that was the original mission I got to play back in the day, and that was just fantastic, And then, yeah, when they brought that mission back into the Mafia 1 remake, I was ecstatic because they made it much better, and it was much better. It was fantastic. So I'm putting this in S ranking, man, because the OG Mafia, it does hold a special place in my heart. Absolutely. All right, next we got Mafia 2. Now, Mafia 2 was absolutely A tier. I will say, it was good. By all means, it was great, but there was just a lot of content in the game that just didn't really matter at some point. Like, you can go everywhere. You can go into stores and diners. You can rob places, do things, but it just really wasn't worth it. You know what I'm saying? If you rob a fucking clothing store or a gun store and shit, you don't really get much shit. You don't really get much of anything, and then the cops are just on your fucking ass. They're going to destroy you. So that was one thing I really didn't like about Mafia 2. I just really felt like the content in the game could have been better utilized to the player, because like I said, all these extra features were fun in the game. But that was really only complaint I had. But other than that, the story, you're Vito Scaletta, you are a young Italian American, you get into trouble with the law. So either you can go to the military or you can go to prison. You have a friend named Joe. I forgot his last name. And then, yeah, you two are lifelong friends. And then when you get out of the military, you come back home, you're not liking your lifestyle. Vito isn't. And then Joe calls him up. He's like, hey, man, I got some jobs for you, man. I know some good people. Obviously, they're a part of the mafia. So when he first gets his first taste of the money that they could be making if he was a mafia soldier, he does join the mafia. He gets involved. Kind of like Mafia 1, where, Tommy D'Angelo, he's just a cab driver until he runs into Sam and Paulie, who are working under Don Salieri. He gets a taste of what that mafia money looks like, and he joined the mafia. I'm telling you, and there's some truth to that. As we know, gangs, organized crime, you get pulled in by the lifestyle most times, so that was a very, very accurate depiction on the, poverty to crime lifestyle pipeline, so that was great. I'm going to give this an A. Mafia 3, I'm not gonna lie, y'all, Mafia 3, I still have not cared to play this game again because it just didn't really do much for me. You are an organized crime, but it's less mafia and it's more like just organized crime in gangs at this point, because you're in the South now. You do get involved with like some Italians and stuff like that, Irish, Haitians, all that stuff, but it's just like, no, it just started pulling away from the actual mafia Italian, basically that story, and I didn't really like that very much. And of course, you run into Vito Scaletta from Mafia 2 in Mafia 3. But like I said, you can choose not to utilize him. He gets pissed off and shit. So there's that. I didn't like how that go. So Mafia 3, it was okay. You play a black guy. His name is Lincoln Clay. He's also ex-military. And then he just decides to rage a war on the streets after a racist organized group kill your fucking family and destroy your fucking family business and kills them and burns them down, and you're alive. So, you and an old military personnel buddy who now works for the CIA, I think, he helps you along your mission amongst other people. So yeah, I'm gonna get this a B because, like I said, the story, just Lincoln Clay, I just did not have any type of personal connection with him that I had with Vito Scaletta or Tommy DeAngelo. I definitely had a very huge character connection with Tommy DeAngelo, because he was just trying to make a living. He really did not mean to get wrapped up in this mafia lifestyle. And, and then in the end, I'm not going to spoil it for you if you haven't played it, but yeah, in the end, he tries to turn a new leaf. But, once you're involved with crime, it's hard to get out. So now we're going with Mafia 2, the remaster. Now, Mafia 2, the remaster, I did not care for this. I really did. It was okay. Like, it wasn't bad. It's just that, there were glitches and stuff like that it was notorious for, and it was basically just a port to next gen consoles, and it was a horrible port. So like, the game wasn't different, and it involved more of its DLC this time around. And yeah, like I said, it wasn't any different. It was just a port to the new consoles, but like I said, nothing about it, so we don't need to do that. Now, the Mafia remake, the new version or the remaster that came out in 2019 or 2020, this was a masterpiece, you guys. This was a remake of the OG Mafia over here, and they did everything times 10. Like, just the graphics and the story and the voice acting, all that stuff, they just amped it up all the way. This game already was written incredibly for a 2003 game. All they had to do was just tweak it to modern day standards when it comes to the writing and stuff like that. And it was fucking fantastic, you guys. Like, I've beaten this game like 4 times, I believe. Mafia, the #1 remake specifically. I've beaten this game, I don't know how many times as a kid. So it's off the charts. But this one right here, I've beaten this game easily about 4 times, I want to say, because even though the story was linear, it was just that good of a damn story. I kept playing it. Finally, we have the Mafia Old Country. Now, this game, I'm not going to lie, for what it was actually pretty good. And I know you're going to say, how did you rank Mafia 3 over Mafia the Old Country? Well, guys, I'm going to tell you this. First of all, Mafia Old Country is a prequel, and for the little that they had with the prequel, and the DLC for this just dropped, so I'm going to beat that. I might do a review on that or a Let's Play, I don't know. But yes, the Mafia Old Country, what it did was that it took the prequel, bare bone prequel, and it just told you the backstory of how the Mafia works and how they get involved in America. That is something that people want to see, because we know the Mafia as just this very, very powerful organized crime group in the United States and obviously in Italy and other places. But it tells you the pipeline on how they started immigrating to America and, in some bits and pieces of Mafia Ochre. That's not what it's all about, but still, it does a very good job with that, and the game was actually written pretty good. People call it like a walking simulator. I've seen some of the reviews. It's not a walking simulator, you guys. It is a lot of traveling, but you can skip the traveling if you want. And it is a nice little love story between him and the Don's daughter. But yeah, for what it was, you guys, it was nice. It was nice to see, just classic Italians before they came to the streets of New York in the modern game era, or in the modern Mafia games. All right, so that's gonna do it for me, you guys. Let me know which Mafia is your favorite. Like I said, y'all, the Mafia #1 remake, that is my favorite Mafia, absolutely, hands down, without a doubt. That shit was just way too authentic, way too way too immersive. It was extremely immersive. It just made me feel like playing the first Mafia all over again when I was a kid, but even better, y'all. So let me know what y'all think. That's gonna do it for me, and I will see y'all in the next video. Peace.